So I wear many hats, and one of the hats that I wear is that I am the Human Factors Lead for this organisation here, which is Health Education in England North East. That covers from North Allerton right over to Maryport, right up to Berwick, all that period. And so I'm the surgical lead for this thing here, which is called Human Factors. And you may think, crikey Moses, what are human factors? So let me just try and explain that a little bit before I go into what's in the operating theatre. So human factors are all those things which are non-technical factors. So, for example, if I am doing a liver transplant, I have to, let's just take this liver out and then put another liver in. And I have to make sure I get the right blood vessels to the right blood vessels, I have to make sure that I get the bile duct to the bile duct, and I have to make sure that the patient doesn't bleed to death. So that's a technical exercise. That is something that is a craft. You have to do it, you have to practice, and you have to have knowledge about what you're doing, confidence to do it. So let's just have an analogy with, say, tennis. Okay, so to play a backhand, you have to know how to play a backhand, and a forehand, and a serve, and a volley. And I personally play a lot of tennis. But what separates actually the very, very, very good tennis players from the good tennis players is not the ability to play the one great shot, because you look probably in the top 500 in the world in people who play tennis. They can all play great backhand. They can all play great forehand, they can all serve really well. What separates them, I think, is what goes on in here. And what goes on in here, and it's connected to this, actually ends up in a good outcome. And you can probably think in your work, in your life, and other examples, whereby it's what goes on up here connects to the body that ends up with the outcome. So even like driving, you're driving, you can drive well and drive badly, and you know, sometimes you get to the end of the journey and you think, God, I don't know how I've got here, because you've been distracted. So, and it's not the ability to drive, you know, you can still drive, it's other things which go on. So that leads on to what John was saying in the way that I've got a big interest in patient safety, and the ingredients which go into patient safety outcomes are not just the ability to be able to do an operation, or know when to do an operation, or know how to deal with the complications afterwards. That's sort of clinical skill and clinical knowledge. And I think there are lots of other things feeding into that which actually have at least as a bigger impact on the outcome. So, going on from that, I'm going to talk about learning this sort of thing and how to actually teach the technical side as well as the other things in the operating theatre. Because learning just doesn't happen. You have to think about how it's going to be achieved from both the trainee, the trainer, I'm a trainer now, not a trainee, I was a trainee, and the environment itself. Because if I actually don't train people, my job now, I've been consultant for 11 years, and I'm, touch wood, I feel pretty confident, I'd say very confident, because you never be complacent, but confident doing liver transplants, very difficult ones, redos. My job now is to do them, but what happens if I don't train anybody? I retire in 10, 15 years time, who's doing them? So I have to train people to do them, and so that's what I think I'm in the phase of my career now, is actually getting to the point that when I retire, the person who takes over is, I don't say is going to be as good as me, I say I want them to be better than me. That's what I say. I don't want to be the best surgeon, I want to train someone up to be able to eventually take over from me, and that's how a department like this actually can grow, because you bring people on to be better than you. And that's a sort of one of my general philosophies, but I'll not wander off into philosophy, I'll try and stick to the brief. And I've put playing the right soundtrack here because there's got to be the right mood in the operating theatre to actually achieve that learning. Does that sound okay? If there's any questions, or I spot someone just about to say something, I might pick on them and say, what do you think? Because I just, you know, anything you want to ask, just ask me. So start with the end in mind. So the end of this, after about, I don't know, 30 minutes or something like that, John, so whatever, yeah. 30, 40 minutes, then what can we sort of think about? And we could say, right, what does, it's a little bit American, sorry about that, OR, so I should say that in American accent. So what does a successful operated session look like? So I'm going to go to theatre, operates on Mondays and Wednesdays. I'm thinking, right, at the end of Monday, the end of Wednesday, what has been a successful theatre day? So, what do you think, just to put you on the spot, what do you think is a successful theatre day? So we get to 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. Say again?
I'm still alive.
You're still alive, so patients have done well.
Yeah.
Patients have done well, so that's what we want, isn't it? So that's it. So just imagine in theatre though, right, there's patients, there's surgeons, there's anaesthetists, there's nurses, scrub staff and trainees. So imagine the patient wants the operation to go well, I'm sure everybody does. What else would mean a good session in theatre, do you reckon?
That you get all achieved that you plan to do.
So you've got all the cases done. Yeah, you haven't had to cancel anybody. Absolutely perfect, yeah? What else do you reckon?
Somebody's learned something.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and that's not just surgical trainees, nurses, nursing trainees, anaesthetists, anaesthetic trainees. So there's been a good learning environment. What about anything else?
Following the plan.
Following the plan. They were a good group, this, John, aren't they? Actually? Have you given the slides beforehand? Actually, no, following the plan. So that's called having the same mindset. So that's being in the same place to be able to say, right, I think this is what we're going to do, and in fact, that's what the rest of the team want to do. So following that plan to conclusion. I'll just put some. I'm sure I've got the answers somewhere actually, but maybe it's on the next page. The other thing is that people say is finishing on time. It's quite important. Because you say, well, yeah, that's okay, but you have to run over, you have to run over. The trouble is, if I run over and finish at 8 o'clock every week, the staff are like, you know, it's okay, you have to be appreciative of the staff that you work with. So what we're going to do, we're going to talk about that a little bit. This is just headings actually. What's peculiar, what's strange about the operating room as opposed to the rest of the hospital? You know, outpatient clinics, on the ward, lecture theatres. So I'm going to say, you know, because it's quite a tight physical environment. It's can be quite a pressure cooker in there. So let's look at why it's different for the OR. Can we look at any frameworks about how we can work out how the teaching is achieved? Any strategies to achieve that? And I've already told you one of them in the way that I always tell jokes in theatre. One joke every time I start. I make the joke really bad just to calm everybody down. So I've got a few more I might spin out actually as we go. So what strategies are there to achieve them? I'll tell you some things that I do to achieve a good session. How can we assess whether it's been a good session? If I've got time, I might go into some of the literature about some papers and some research into this, because there's research, and what can you possibly take away from this lecture. So we'll probably just go through a few of those and see how we get on. And maybe what I sometimes have is I bring a trainee along and let them talk about me, and they can tell you about me rather than me tell you about me. So, but we haven't got one just today. Right, okay, so we've already sort of looked at this a little bit. What makes a successful OR session? Here are some of my thoughts. Look, you know, you don't go into, well, I suppose some people go into medicine to make a lot of money. I don't go into medicine to make a lot of money. I go to actually do a good job. When I want to go to sleep at night, I want to think I have done something really worthwhile. And I think 99.9999% of people in healthcare actually want to do that. You know, they really do. So I think that was the first person, I think, you know, good outcome. Safe operations. Gain experience from being in there. People like working in teams. They really do like working in teams. I don't know. You guys must have worked in teams in your life. Work teams, sport teams. You know, you work together. You do something. It's quite a good feeling, isn't it? Actually, when you've all done your bit and you feel as though you've had a role and it's all worked out. Finish on time. People like to feel as though they have had a positive contribution to that operating theatre. Okay, I'm the surgeon, I'm doing the operating. Someone on the floor staff might be the person getting a bit of equipment which is going to provide something for me, but they could feel good because they've thought about it beforehand, they've got it ready, it's there available. Then when I say, Kerry, have you got the stapler? She's got it, Mr. French, here it is. She feels like, yeah, I've got that ready. It's not like, oh, I forgot about that, I've got to go to theatre 20 to go and get it. So, positive experience. And I put that down in inverted commas, serious fun. Look, you know, you come to work, you do a good job, you can't be, you know, all the time. You've got to let off a little bit of steam. You have to, otherwise tension mounts. And that teaching has occurred. So I think we've got quite a lot of those. And that's what I think, if you end the day with that sort of package, I think you look pretty well. Because if you end that day with that sort of package, then that means that people will want to come back and work in your operating theatre. And it also means that it's a little bit strange, but it gets, I look at things in a slightly strange way, but you get chips in the bank. So if I do this and people have had a good day, if I then have to open a second operating theatre because I've got an emergency I need to do, all these people that have to do that, such as all the staff, they'll say, oh, Mr. French, yeah, okay. And they'll have a positive experience to be able to say, let's move heaven and earth to be able to open a second operating theatre, for example. So, does that sort of make sense? Mm-hmm. None of it's technical, is it? But it's just people stuff. But I think this is really, really, really important. And, you know, when I first started training, none of this stuff was on the agenda at all. I've got a really big interest in this because I think this has a huge input into the NHS as a whole, really. You know, the NHS is one of the biggest businesses in this country, and I think we're quite a way behind, you know, Deloitte and PricewaterhouseCoopers and Lloyds, all these big organisations, even, you know, pharmaceutical industries like, you know, maybe a few Ipsen and Mylan. Perhaps I shouldn't say that on for YouTube, but anyway. Right, okay. Now, let's have a little look at this. Now, I like reading lots of books, and this is a great book, and it's about Stephen Covey, who's a chap from America, and he says that if you're going to be highly effective, you do these things. And first is, I'm not going to run through them all, just maybe 3 of them. The first thing is, look, if you're going to get things done, you have to be proactive. You know, you can't be reactive, you have to be proactive, you get up and do things. John and the team here get up and do this sort of stuff. I'm sure you do things. You know, very few things actually land on your lap. Begin with the end in mind, that's what I've said. You know, start with the end in mind. Where do you want to be? You start where you want to be, then you can get there in various different routes, but if you know where you're going, you're more likely to get there. The last one I'm going to talk about is sharpen the saw. What do you think sharpen the saw means?
Make it all better.
Right.
Refine it more, the process.
Yeah, absolutely. So go round again and make it even more finer. That's one aspect of it. Another one is if you imagine this saw is yourself, then keeping it sharp. Reflecting. So reflecting. So sharpen the saw is keeping yourself sharp physically and mentally. So physically, and as a serious note, physically keeping yourself fit. Doing some exercise, don't work too much, don't drink a lot of alcohol, don't smoke, and don't take drugs. Because actually, what goes in your body is what you are. I know that sounds, I'm not trying to preach here to you, but actually, you know, I think that's important to a good job. The other thing is your brain, as you rightly say, is reflect. When you've made a mistake, reflect on it, try and get better. And things that cause you stress, just don't let them into your mind. You know, look after your mind, look after your body. If you look after yourself, I think you can actually look after people better as well, other people. Anyway, so sometimes I do surgical meetings and people look at me and go, God, what's all this about? But I really do, yeah, I think at the end of it, people do get it. Right, I'm going to move on from that. Right, so what about the operating theatre itself? So we've talked about what it looks good at the end. What is funny, or what is peculiar, what is pertinent to the operating theatre? It's small. It's not like a big hospital, it's like you're in there. It's noisy, potentially. There's potential for stress. It can be quite busy. Has anybody been in an operating theatre? I'm sorry, Babe says patience, but I've seen much there. Okay, I don't know that's that. But have you been just seen it generally, or you've seen it on television or something, haven't you? You've seen it. So what were your perceptions of that? Just
it was really small and it didn't smell very nice.
Yeah, funny smells, aren't
Yeah.
they? Yeah, it's all maybe a bit hot, light smelling. Anything else? Just
Well, a visit to the Institute theatres that the was there before they opened, they were much bigger than the other theatres on level 3, you know.
They are better there actually. Yeah. They have iPod dockers as well, which is good for the music, but that's another thing. So, but you know, Yeah, they're pretty busy with people in there. There's a lot of technical equipment, a lot of people with different jobs to do. Historical culture in operating theatre. So I don't know whether I'm pushing the boat out to say I think I'm a little bit different in terms of what surgeons typically have been portrayed as in the carry-on films and maybe, you know, I don't know, other hospital dramas, and somebody walks in with a pinstripe suit and says, "You're for theatre," and then that's it, and the patient's going, "What the hell's going on?" So, but you know, historically I think there was a very hierarchical situation that in fact if you were a scrub nurse or on the floor, you wouldn't dare speak to the surgeon, because if you said anything they'd look at you and go, you know, it just wasn't the situation. I think that's dangerous. I think that's extremely dangerous, because it might be that that one nurse has noticed something that nobody else has noticed, that you picked up the wrong size stapler. She or he should be able to say something to you and say, "Mr. French or Jeremy, you know, are you sure, you know, what's going on? Are you sure that's the right stapler?" "Oh no, it's the wrong stapler." You know, I don't want her to be able to, or him to be able to not want to speak to me. Can you see how that's important to level?
Mutual respect, really.
Mutual respect. In
Yeah.
fact, that is one of the key factors of a learning environment, is mutual respect. You know, I don't have to go around shouting at people and acting like some sort of demigod to actually get a working environment with people. It's, you know, people know what the deal is in terms of to get a good outcome. You don't have to act like a, I can't think of a word. Well, I can, but I better not say it. I think you know what I mean. I think you know what I mean.
You mean Prof Manus that I don't like jazz? Listen to this.
Well, yeah, we come on to music actually, and in fact, yeah. So I start off with my music, but when I'm scrubbed up and I can't get to the iPod, people just change it.
Oh,
It's like they don't like my 1970s rock music, so, you know, like Deep Purple and things like that. Anyway, yeah. So we've got tasks to do as well. Yeah, this is it. So and also, you know, we're talking about the team, right? But not the same team. So that's got pros and cons. So if you work in the same team every week, what do you reckon the pros are in that?
Everybody knows everybody else's job.
No, there knows your familiarity, you know your job,
Could get a bit sort
You
of
know what's going to come next.
complicated.
you know what's going to come next, you've got the same mental model that it is probably. I know Mr. French likes this is the way he does it, therefore I'm prepared. You know, familiarity. What potential downsides you be aware of though?
Could become business.
Yeah, you could cut corners, couldn't you? So that's really, really important. I always say as a surgeon, that you know, the most dangerous time as a surgeon is when all the operations you do have gone really well. You've done 10 operations, they've gone brilliant, you've not had a complication, you think you're great, you can take cases on. That's the time it can come and bite you right on the backside, because you probably just become a little bit, you know, potentially complacent. So I say that to all trainees, just aware, when you're riding a wave, just really, really take care. That's the danger time. I do teach them how to do operations as well, by the way. Not just talk this sort of stuff about actually doing it technically. Right, and also, you know, in an operating theatre, you've got high stakes. You've got high stakes in a short period of time. But it's fantastically rich. There's loads to learn in there, both technically and non-technically. So so that's why, you know, I think it's just such a great environment, and it should be utilised. Okay, so maybe I mean, you know, probably some of the stuff that I do, liver transplants. I also do other resectional type of surgery. So you know, I tend to do the big stuff. I'm not really that much interested in small little hernias. I'll do them, but you know, they're mainly training, so I'd like to do the big stuff. So this is a patient, I'm not going into obstetrics, by the way, so this patient's not pregnant. This is a gentleman, actually, heads up here, feet are down here, and this is the abdomen. And believe it or not, thought he was just putting a little bit of weight on. So that's what we took out of him. That's 16 kilograms. That's 16 kilograms. There's a spleen. Just on the side, just here, there's a bit of the pancreas, and this is a what's called a liposarcoma. So this is a sarcoma, so cancer of fat, and essentially the patient, all his abdomen was this tumour. And so if we look at this now, this is the patient's abdomen. So the head's here, the feet come down like this, and can you see the structure here that divides? That's the aorta. So that's the blood going down the body. And this structure here is the vena cava, that's blood coming back up the body. This place here, that's where the left kidney was. That's in that mass, that's in the bucket. This space here, that's where the spleen, part of the stomach, and the tail of the pancreas was. That's all gone. The bowel sort of hanging out here. So this patient's had most of colon out, left kidney, tail of pancreas, spleen, part of stomach, and the entire retroperitoneum. So you can imagine, you know, doing that sort of operation, you know, you've got a potential for problems there. So you make a hole in that's gonna, the blood's gonna spurt, it's gonna be, you know, that, make a hole in that's gonna be a problem as well. So you've got to have everybody on board about what you're doing to achieve your goal with regard to this type of surgery.
Did he survive?
Yeah, did really well. He was an electrician, and the reason why he came is he couldn't get down to do the wires, so he went back to his job. Yeah. So, it took a while getting out of hospital, because you see what happens with people with tumours of this size is they don't know, but they become deconditioned. So they get by, but they're not eating well, and their physical fitness does go down to something. So when they're on an operation, because they're a little bit lower, they take a hit, and then it takes a while for them to come back up. Part of it is me to actually let the patient know that that's the expectation. Look, 2 weeks after the operation, don't worry. You know, this is what it's like. It's going to take another 4 weeks, but just, you know, I need you to be on the side with me. And you know, there's lots of stuff in theatre. Dr. Snowden there is an anaesthetist, and Tracy there is a scrub nurse. It's not on the same page. Just to give you an idea, there's lots of stuff going in theatre. They're quite young there actually. It might be older than but anyway, there you go. Different case. This case, a different case here. Just to, not too many slides. Sorry if you're squeamish, by the way, guys, but no one's vomited yet. This is a young patient, and what we've done here is that you can see the chest is open. So head's here, legs are here, and what we have is the liver here. And we have a cancer here. Now, this patient has had hepatocellular cancer, so that's cancer of the liver, and although a normal liver, so I have hepatocellular cancer in a normal liver. And we treated the patient with SIRT, which is these radioactive beads, and I'm going to talk on that before, some of you may have been at that, to shrink the tumour. 2 rounds of that. It shrunk it right down, but it's still involving the vena cava. That's the big vein at the back. If I go in there, try and take that out, that's going to be difficult to do without more control than just putting a clamp on. So, cardiothoracic surgeons over the chest, put some cannulas in the heart, and what they do is that they put the patient on cardiopulmonary bypass. So what that means is the blood comes from the heart gets stopped, the machine oxygenates the blood, puts it back into the brain works. But the rest of the body, the circulation stops, and we cool the patient down to about 18, 19, 20 degrees C. And that means it gives us about 40 minutes to actually, I mean, we get the patient open and get it all mobilised and ready, then we go into bypass, and then we do the operation, we take the liver out, and resect, virtually out, to resect the cancer, and then reconstruct it, put it back in. So that was what that looks like. So there it was, and there it is. So there's the cut surface, and there's the vena cava. And can you see that's a patch? That's like a Gore-Tex patch. So reconstruct that vena cava, and that's the vein that drains liver. We've re-implanted in just there. So that's after we've done that. So that's quite a big job. You can imagine they stayed in hospital for a while, but this patient got a complete cure from that. Complete cure.
No secondaries?
No secondaries at all. Absolutely not. So, and in fact, so Professor Manas was the first person to do this type of thing with on a patient with renal tumours, but we've together extended the indication now for people with liver tumours, and there's actually only isn't a place in America that does this type of thing. So we are definitely pushing the boat out, and you can imagine, going back to human factors, you have to have confidence and nerve to be able to do that type of thing, not just do the operation. There's other things involved as well.
Sorry,
Can I ask, is all that heaving at the same time?
No, so if you look at something like that's afterwards now. So if you look at something like that, the heart will be fibrillating, not going. There'll be no blood going up down that body, and it feels cold. No blood, and it's anticoagulated. So it's basically the anticoagulate to make sure the blood's thinned, cool the patient down, stop the heart. We put clamps across aorta and cava, and then do the job. 45 minutes, 40 minutes you've got. Didn't take it that long to be able to do it. Restart the heart and warm the patient up, and that can take 2 to 3 hours, 1 to 2 hours to do it in a nicely slow fashion.
Those two cases really do illustrate how sharpening the saw is so important.
You've got to be fit.
Yeah.
No, that takes a long time. You can't get tired after about 3 hours ago. I need to sit down.
Yeah.
You know, you do need to be up here and just on it, basically.
You get nice neat stitches as well when you stitch them.
And sometimes the patients like been through all this operation and they go, yeah, but my wound here's a little bit bad. We go. You've been through. So right. So going back to the operating theatre, right, let's have a little look. So this is what I sort of think about myself with regard to what can we teach in the operating theatre, and I touched on it a little bit before. So we can teach about the procedure itself, like when to take the cava out, how to stitch it in, what stitch size to use, how far the stitches are apart from here, what the tension to put on, where to put the clamps, what type of clamp to use, etc, 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 infinitum. So there's also these other things here which I think I'm sort of touching on, and this thing here, I think it's like this sort of ice on the top. You can do this when I think you've got all this sorted out as well. So it's like a little pyramid, and this is important, sort of the tone in theatre, what it's like, and slightly difficult to describe, but I like it. It's you know, sometimes you go into an environment, whatever it is, and you're like, oh, it's a bit icy in here, you know, maybe with in-laws. No, didn't say that, but no, in-laws are great. But you know, it's social environment or work environment. You're like, you know, a bit of stress in here. Or you might go in and you just think, oh, it's a bit too jolly in here, or you know, is everybody concentrating, or you know, so it's not. So to get the right tone means to me is that it's everyone's attentive, but you don't want everybody on edge. So it's like, for example, there's a surgeon in that I know, not in this institution, somewhere else, and it's pretty tense, and has to have silence in the operating theatre. Silence. And the theatre doors and the bins, you know the bins you put stuff in with whatever else that sometimes go down. The nurses have to put cotton pads on those to make sure that they don't bang. Now, if you imagine being somebody in that operating theatre and you know that the surgeon's as tense as that to be able to have that, you're going to feel pretty jumpy, aren't you? Yeah. So if you feel really jumpy, the performance is going to go up or down. It's going to go down, isn't it? So what I mean is that you know, you don't want people talking about what they've done last Friday really noisily all the time, but you have to have during a say an 8-hour operation, there may be a period of time, for example, 4 slots of 15 minutes where it's really crucial, everyone's silent, concentrate on what needs to happen. Like, for example, when you go onto an off bypass, when you liver transplant, because lots of clamps going in different tubes, you don't want people like, I'm going out on Friday, wrong thing. Concentrate, everyone's game goes up, and then when it's done, say, right, everyone, that's fine, can relax a little bit, can relax now. So you get people's game up and game down. And so it's getting that right tone. Does that sort of make sense?
Yeah.
To make sure people do that. And that's not just me being assertive, that's anybody being assertive. Did anybody remember that case a while ago of that young lady who had the ENT operation and she lost her airway? Do you remember it? They're on TV. She lost her airway and the doctors were trying ages to sort the airway out. And essentially, the nurses came in with a tracheostomy trolley.
Yes.
Do you remember that? and they all knew she needed a tracheostomy, emergency tracheostomy, but everyone was task focused on doing this particular task, and they probably went to surgeons to say, "Hey doctors, what are you doing? Just stop that. Just get a blooming tracheostomy done." And so, you know, I think that's not just me, that's everybody to be able to say, have the ability to be able to say something because something's needed to be said. You've got to be able to respond to change. You know, things can change in an operation, they really can. Managing expectations, so that's something like, right, so if I'm training a trainee, now they go into the operation, they say I'm doing a right hepatectomy, taking half someone's liver out. So the trainees walk into the operating theatre thinking, right, okay, I can do this. I just need maybe a bit of help from Mr. French, but I'm going to do this operation. I'm thinking, I've got a lot on my list today. I'm probably going to have to do this operation because I need to get through it. And you know, if I train someone, it's going to take me an hour extra. Okay, so we've got a different mental model there. So what happens when we get to the operating table and I suddenly start to do it? The trainee's going to think, it's not very good. What's going on here? Might not want to say something to me, so gets a bit glum. No training happens. Feels a bit miffed, and so performance goes down. Whereas if we have a conversation beforehand and say, right, okay, you can mobilise the liver, do the porta, which is the blue vessels going in, start the transection, see how far you get, you know, maybe get down to the pedicle. After that, I'm probably going to have to take over. Does that sound okay? If you're going well, we're going to fly. We're going to go through it. So that's sort of managing those expectations. I'm not going to touch on this briefly. There is a lot of literature in this, and a course that came out of Aberdeen University, and I'm on the faculty for this for the North East. It's non-technical skills for surgeons, and it uses these four domains: situational awareness, what's going on around you, sense things; leadership skills, how to make a decision, and communication. It's a whole sort of lecture in itself, but you know, there is a structure for it. We do teach on that. Hindsight's great. Anyone like Star Wars? So this says those really were the droids you were looking for. Remember in Star Wars and then missed the droids, but anyway, there you go. So what you don't want to do is get to the end of the operating list and missed out on an opportunity and think, oh, I should have done this. I think about it beforehand. Right, so this gentleman was mentioning mutual respect. So if we're thinking about the learning environment, it's about respecting everybody in there. We've talked about this, having a shared vision. Yeah, we both think we know what's going to happen. That's the whole team. Communicating on a two-way thing. It's not about being on transmit all the time. You've got to receive as well. So, you know, go backwards and forwards. Thinking about it afterwards. Someone's mentioned reflection. You know, and I always say to the staff, thank you very much, that went really well today. Or if it didn't, you know, it has happened on occasions that things haven't gone particularly smoothly. I just, you know, the way that I say that is to say, things didn't go quite so well, we'll come back another time and have a think about what we can do differently. So, you know, it is important to identify good and bad. And this is really important. This is really, really important. If someone says to me, they never make a mistake, I'm worried. I am really, really, really worried, because that to me suggests that they haven't got the insight to be able to understand that it is going to happen, whatever level, small, bigger, big, whatever, and therefore they're not in a position to be able to think about reflecting and getting better. I've made mistakes. I've not done it because I want to make mistakes. I don't think, you know, I mean, frankly, I suppose there are very few people in NHS who do that. Everyone's trying their best. Everybody I know is trying their best. So if a mistake occurs, it's incredibly rare. And I've never really come across it as someone said, right, I'm purposely going to make a mistake here. It's other factors which come in. So in fact, you know, if something goes wrong and a trainee's caused a problem, for example, the most recent one was I was doing a liver transplant was occurring and the trainee was benching the liver. And what that means is the liver arrives from somewhere else and we have to prepare it. So you have to take the fat off it, get the vessels all sorted out and make sure it's nice and lean to be able to put in the patient. And that involves getting the arteries sort of isolated. And one was cut by mistake. And this person really technically can do it and has done it many times before. I was really, really, really worried. And, you know, I thought, well, this person hasn't done it for a reason, on purpose. And I said, don't worry about it. We can repair it. You've identified it. You've come and told me. You can still do the operation. I'm still confident that you'll be able to get through it. Told the patient afterwards. The patient was like, well, didn't really, you know, because you've got a duty of candour. The patient was fine. But I didn't actually blame that particular trainee at the time. I wanted him to go through it. But we did have a chat afterwards and said, what was going, you know, you've done it many times before. And he said, well, you know, he was rushing a little bit, and he got a trainee with him who was helping him, who was not quite as trainee, so he thought, again, what I'd do, I'd slow down, and I'd get Mia along to be able to say, can you just show me a little bit better? But he wanted, I think he wanted to do it to show me that he could do it a certain length of time, and it was, you know, that type of thing. Right, I'm going to just whiz through that a little bit. That's weird, isn't it? Well, where have I put that up there? Right, so, okay, so imagine, imagine this is an operating theatre, okay? And imagine that is the trainer, and that, I don't think I'm going with this, that is the trainee, okay, that's the patient in the middle, and that's the theatre staff, all sort of like, all around there. And so, the way you can look at the theatre environment and how to get trained there, you've got to have a good environment, you've got a trainer with the right brain to be able to say, I'm going to train, and you've got a trainee with the right brain to be able to say, I want to learn. Yeah? So it's not rocket science, it's just, you know, you can look at those three things. And then once you've got that, you've got a happy environment. So, I'll come up with loads of stuff actually, and I've got this, it's called, it's the OR barometer. And so you got a happy face there, and it's not a great happy face there. So I do lots of operations on other people's patients. So what I mean by that is, for example, I do a lot of sarcoma work. So I will go with the orthopaedic surgeons in their theatre, and I'll go in there and I'll do the bowel bit by way the bone bit. A lot of it's down the pelvis. Another one is for the renal tumours, so I'll go with the urologist, and while they take the kidney out with me, I'll do the IVC, the big vein work. So I've got a lot of experience of going into other people's theatres. And I can sense what a theatre's like and sort of see how it is. And this is the floor staff. You look at the floor staff, and you just go in, you just walk in, and you can just, in a sense, you just look at the face of the floor staff and what they're like. And if they're pretty happy, you know things are going very well. If not, they're the most perceptive people, really, or the first sign that things aren't going to plan. It's a little bit like doing liver transplant, and the best test you can do is a PT, which is a coagulation test. It's the most sensitive. And I always think that when they're not feeling so good, that means it's quite tense. That means the learning goes down in that theatre. So, just something I've picked up. So, okay, right, this is where it gets a bit weird. Now, just bear with me, I'll just about another 10 minutes or something. Just tell you one or two of the things that I do to try and make this environment good. Right. Okay, who are these people? They're Mr. Men and Mrs, aren't they? Right, come on then, team. So who are these people?
It's Mr. Smiley.
Mr. Smiley, it's not Mr. Smiley though, it's Mr.
Happy.
Happy. Mr. Happy, yeah?
Mr. Angry.
Yeah.
Little Miss Giggles.
Little Miss Sunshine. Yeah.
Mr. Sneeze.
Panic.
Forgetful.
Panic, no, it's the green shoes.
Forgetful.
No. Jealous, Little Miss Jealous.
Oh, I know that one.
So, anyway, so and Mr. Men and Mrs is great because actually their character is displayed on their face. Right, so now, what you see is you see my behaviour. You see this, don't you? You see this? Because I'm just here now behaving. What you don't really know is what I'm thinking or what I'm feeling. You might have got an idea of what I'm thinking, I'm feeling from how I'm behaving, but you just see this. But all these three things are connected. And I come out to the same. Who are these people?
Twits.
That's fantastic. It's a great book, actually. I love it when Sheba gets in to eat some spaghetti that's actually worms. It's just fantastic. Anyway, so that's Mrs. Twit. And you know what? Mrs. Twit, when she was younger, was actually a really good-looking lady. But what's happened over the time is that she has had so many bad thoughts about trying to get Mr. Twit that it's turned her face into this sort of gargoyle-esque type of individual. So, and that's because she's thinking bad things. And she's got horrible feelings, behaving badly, so it turns into this. So, right, let's go back to entrance to theatre then. So I'm walking into theatre Monday morning, and I walk in on the telephone, really sort of a bit aggressive to someone, saying, "Oh, you should have just sorted that blooming thing out." Put the phone down and look up. So who is looking at me now?
Everybody.
Or
The patient.
well, patients maybe in the anaesthetic room. But
All the stuff.
yeah, people might be looking at me if I look up quickly. But what tends to happen, you go in and no one's looking at you. Because you've gone in, they've looked at you and gone, "Oh, in a bad mood." And then they're like, "Oh, let's do this over here." You walk in, you look up, no one's looking at you at all. So what do they think they're thinking?
Oh, he's in one silly
Oh, bad mood today. You know, are they going to be a bit more stressed? What happens if you're too stressed? Performance goes down.
They'd be frightened to speak.
They'd be frightened to speak to you. You're absolutely right. They'd be like, "Oh God, I don't want to say anything just here. You know, this is going to be a bad day." But if you go in there, if you may have had that telephone conversation, but go, "Right, put that phone down. Right, okay." You go into theatre and you say, "Right, folks, have you had a good weekend? Got a big list today. Big list, but I think we can get through this. We can get through this as a team. Look, we can do this, and we're going to have some really good jokes from it." And I was going, "Okay, it's a big list, but let's just get together as a team and work and actually do it." And that's because I've got quite a cheery face, and therefore, you know, I think that projects onto people, and then you have a positive environment to do it. Again, it's not surgery, is it? But it just gets people motivated. So, and I say that to trainees. Go into theatre. Like that. People respond to it.
And the surgeons choose the team?
That's a good point, and there are teams for certain theatres, so I wouldn't personally choose them unless it was one of those extremely big cases I mentioned. Then the more experienced staff would be on there. They're experienced enough to know that as a team it's going to require someone who's at the top of their game for doing that. So it's rare that I would have to suggest, actually, you know, can we have somebody else here? They're pretty switched on with that situation. But for example, anaesthetist-wise, again, if we're doing big cases like that, we would choose the liver anaesthetist to be able to do it, rather than just a general anaesthetist. So yes, you do select your team to some degree.
What's the difference
What's the difference?
between a liver anaesthetist and a...
They're much more familiar with bypass, and also the physiology of the liver. So if you're doing a very big liver resection, they're more aware of keeping the venous pressure extremely low, the medications they'll use. They're also, you know, very familiar with extreme blood loss that can occur, so they're very good at managing that. Also coagulation, so when they're doing operations on the liver, coagulation can go to pots, so they're good at monitoring that and managing that. And again, you know, if, you know, big hole in one of those vessels, lose 2 litres in like 30 seconds. You know, so you've got a clamp on, they don't, you know, faint when that occurs. They just say, over the top, get it, blooming clamp on that or something, you know. But you know, they're familiar with that environment.
Johnny, can we ask who's actually in charge? So you know, you mentioned the
Yeah.
anaesthetist there.
Who do you think's in charge?
Man with a knife.
Man with a knife, yeah. Who do you think people expect to be in charge?
Surgeon.
I would have thought between the anaesthetist and the chief surgeon.
Yeah. So it goes back to, remember I talked about, goes back to this, leadership. So that's one of the things that is important. And the overall person in charge of leading it is going to be the consultant surgeon. However, that really the leadership team is going to be the consultant anaesthetist and the sister in charge of theatre. Those three people are really the leadership team. So, for example, if something is wrong at the top end, and suddenly the endotracheal tube, the cuff on it goes down, and they need to do an emergency reintubation, then I'm not in charge of that, but the anaesthetist says, right, you've got to stop there, I need to deal with this, we need to move the drapes back, and that's important. Or if there's a problem with some equipment, you say, well, you can't use that, well, the bypass isn't working. That's a theatre staff point. So it's not just me or the surgeon. There is a leadership sort of team. But I suppose people naturally do look to the surgeon as providing that direction, and that's something you have to take on board. That's part of the job. It is part of the job. And just to go on from that, the different ways to lead. It could be John, you're doing that. Directive. It could be, let's work as a team and achieve it, or it could be, does anybody got any ideas for different techniques?
Was the activity recorded within the?
I was just going to say they're all videos now.
Okay, so that's interesting, and people have done that. And you're talking about not looking at the operation, looking at the other stuff, or the operation itself, or both.
I'm just thinking if there's any adversarial need to actually pursue some legal proceedings, what might be the evidence base which is collected from the
yeah. Well, so I have so with robotic surgery and laparoscopic, it's easier to video because it's like on a television screen, and a lot of my patients like to see the videos. I had one patient who basically had a 9-hour robotic distal pancreatectomy. It took me a long time to do it. It was one of my first ones, and I gave her the DVD. She wanted it, and she went home on a Friday. She emailed me by the hospital on Saturday morning. She stayed up all night and watched it, which I thought was a bit excessive. But she didn't know she knew what was going on. But anyway, there were a few sort of like pauses in there. I was thinking what to do. So we don't record all of them, but I take a lot of pictures for education, but I record some of them. But it's not necessary. Sometimes in America, if you record it, your insurance premium is reduced. What I'm interested in, though, as well, is you can imagine there's the action here, which is in the operating field, but I'm also interested in having a camera up on the wall, looking at the operating environment. Because mistakes in an operating theatre are very rare to go from swimmingly well to absolutely disastrous. Very rare. Usually what happens is there's a little error, there's another little error, another little error, bit of stress, whatever else, and then it goes on. So actually it'd be interesting to rewind the tape and to say when one thing happens, right, what did you do there, what were you thinking, why did that go on to a second error and a third error and then a real problem? And it's not so much just in there, it's all the way around as well. There's not much evidence on that, and that's something I'm be keen to look at, but it's, yeah, there's a few barriers to go through, and because everybody has to be on board and things, but that'd be interesting to do. So the other thing that I'm not going to go on too much longer, so it is quite late, just probably another 5 minutes, is this is something that we do, and this is from Atul Gawande, who's a surgeon over in America, and he's brought this in, which is a checklist. So what it does before every list is that we get together as a group. It's called a group hug, and we introduce ourselves. So hi, I'm Jeremy, I'm a surgeon. You go around and you introduce each other, because sometimes there are new team members, so you get to know someone's name. We look at the cases and we say what we're going to do today is this case, and what we need is, what we're going to do is we're going to do this, then we're going to do that, we need that equipment. And there'll be a plan to be able to say, these are the antibiotics we're going to give, we're going to have 10 stockings on. So everybody knows, all written down, so everybody knows exactly where we're going to be. And during that, I'll say to the trainee, or we'll discuss right to the training case, so John, made a name up, John is going to do the first part of the operation, and I will. So everybody knows that's the case. And we identify any potential problems there could be. So that is getting people in the same mental model, so they know what the deal is. And it also, if you've been introduced to somebody, it's easy then to say something to somebody, as this gentleman was saying, if there's a problem, or you know, I'm sorry about that stapler, or you know, we haven't got any blood, or something along those lines. And what it does, it increases safety. It does increase safety, as I've been shown in the literature. Get a shared mental model, and it flattens this hierarchy. Not a big flan of hierarchy. People know who you are, and they know what the deal is. And you know, people in my theatre, I'm pretty jolly, and I like to tell jokes. And they know if I'm not quite as jolly, I'm never angry. If I'm not quite as jolly, they think, oh, right, concentrate here. And I like that perception that people have. If I go a bit quiet, because I'm just chatting all the time, then people are like, naturally, they're a little bit more focused on it. And I like that situational awareness, that perception of what the area is. I've got some laws of French, I'm not going to them all. Right, so I've got everybody in my theatre has to tell a joke. And so I'm waiting behind this chap in the you know, the bank machine, and it's like going like this. It's like all over the place. It's like, you know, I'm just taking ages. I said, just eventually I said to the guy, "What's going on?" And he says, "Oh, sorry, I'm just trying to find my balance." It's bad, John. It's bad. It's bad. But
we're waiting for the joke, Jeremy.
Thanks. Points, laser points, right? So everyone's like, if you ask someone to tell a joke, everyone goes, "Oh my goodness, I can't tell a joke." Whereas if I say I'll go first, you know, tell a really bad joke, set the bar low, then people have the opportunity. Some people will say one straight away. Some people take a while and they'll say one, and it sort of just gives them the, you know, just it's an icebreaker. It's an icebreaker.
That's how you get away with atrocious jokes.
Yeah, and that's why I collect all these jokes in my mind actually as well, which is great. And also I read an awful lot of stuff. I read a book recently when I was on holiday about tidying by Maria Kondo, about actually tidying your house. It's quite good to tidy your brain as well. Anyway, so that was a book recommendation from a trainee, so I always like to get a book recommendation. So, and that starts a conversation, it just gives people an opportunity to talk. Last couple of things, music in theatre, it's a contentious issue. Do you think surgeons listen to music in theatre?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, we do. I like it because it relaxes the atmosphere. I like it because it's a conversation starter when something comes on. It's like, oh, have you heard of this? What was the year? Somebody else can put their iPod in, link in, Bluetooth in. It's their choice. Just a bit of banter. This is one of my favourite albums from when I was 16. Appetite for Destruction. I love to put it on there. And James Prentice, who's my anaesthetic colleague, whenever we're on the sort of end of the operation, we'll always put Appetite for Destruction on, and then everybody knows, right, we're on the road to finishing the case. Everybody knows about music, you know, everybody. So therefore, it's a universal thing. And I'll put this on as well as a sterile cockpit. So this comes from the aviation industry. Now, the aviation industry is where they have a sterile cockpit when that means that nobody talks about anything else other than the work, as in what we're doing right now. And they do that during takeoff and during landing. When they're up in the air on autopilot, they can chat about whatever else. So remember those times I was talking about, those 15-minute times? So I will say to the floor staff, right, can we have the music off, please? So that is like a trigger. And that everyone's like, all right, music's off, right, let's concentrate for those period of time. And it's this sterile cockpit. And it's really visible, it's audible, as in, I've said it, everybody knows what it is. And even my trainees now will say, and I encourage them to say, all right, music off, please. And then when you've done the bit, you say, right, we can stick the music back on now. And it's a real... Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And you're back into it. So I think it's a really useful tool for that. And what I'm thinking about there is I'm probably going to finish because it goes into the sort of research now, and I think that just trying to give you one or two of my ways to work in theatre. So is that okay, guys? I'm probably going to leave it just there.
Jeremy, how do you pick up your team when I mean, presumably things have gone wrong in theatre? How do you pick up your team afterwards? You know, so after that next. procedure you've got to carry out? How do you lift them?
Well, I think that's a good question, and I'll give you an example of one where it occurred, and that was a patient who was having an operation, big operation, in a slightly different theatre because of, I think there's some rewording in one particular theatre, so a slightly different team. And I think they were working in an environment that was probably slightly less pressured, and things weren't quite there when they should have been there, and I felt as though when I was at the table, the understanding of the intensity and the speed by which I wanted things, and things were needed, wasn't quite up to level. It was safe, it was okay, but it wasn't just right up there, and we had, you know, it wasn't an adverse outcome, but it wasn't brilliant. And I was a little bit cross about it in the way that you know, it's not the usual working pattern. So, and I could sense that Sister knew that was the case as well. So I said, right, okay, let's just, you know, I'm not going to rant and rave at everybody now. Let's just say, I think we both realise that that's not been ideal. Can we just, I'll come back tomorrow and we'll just have a little conversation about that. And to her credit, she'd been around the staff, and you know, she said to the staff, look, Mr. French, well, you know, what do you think about that? So she'd actually done some sort of group work with them, and you know what, when they sort of thought about it, they thought, yeah, probably wasn't really quite on it just then. And then I had a chat with Sister about it afterwards and said, look, you know, do we need to go through things? She said, yes, I've had a chat, and before the next case, you know, just said, well, you know, last time it didn't go quite so well, so let's make, you know, we'll be very clear about what we're doing this time. And I realise everyone's trying their best, but you know, I think we've all got to be right on the game, including myself. And it went really very well. I think part of it, the way that I look at it sometimes is like tiny shoelaces. I'm quite a visual person. I like analogies. It's like tiny shoelaces. So every now and again they become a bit loose. So you just need to tie them a bit. You don't have to be too harsh on them and snap them, but you do need just sometimes to do it. And myself as well. You know, you do that with yourself. So it's I think if there's a problem, the way that I look at it, and it's someone who's a disaster coordinator wrote this great book, and he said, if there's a problem or something's occurred, run towards the problem, don't run away from it. Collect information and shower people with information about what we've gathered, what went wrong, why did it go wrong, what can we do, and then get better, don't get bitter. So actually don't blame people and say, we can use this to get better in the future. And I think that's something I look at, and you know, I want to be the best I can be. That's what I value. I want the best I can be. The only way best I can be is looking at myself, getting other people's views, and trying to do what I'm doing good, do it again. And what I'm not quite so good, thinking about it and think, right, I'm going to change that. It's the only way I can do it. So.
I think it's good when you share it with the patient potentially. I know in my husband's operation, he had a complication post-op, I don't know if you would recall. And Professor Manners did come and see him and talk through and said what was going to be changed for the future about the livers and how they were preserved when they were not. And so the patients would benefit, and he took great comfort from the fact that although he had a problem, that there would be other patients who would be operated on in the future, and transplant patients too, who, you know, potentially would not have to go through that. And it made it seem worthwhile to him, you know, and it gave him a lot of comfort actually.
Yeah.
But if that hadn't been shared,
it's negatives all around, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's absolute negatives all around. So you know, yeah, I think being honest with the patient, honest with yourself is extremely useful. And you know, I've certainly learnt over the time I've been a consultant and a trainee that's the way to be. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't anything that anybody had done wrong. I don't think it was just, you know, they learned from the complication that he got.
It's a bit of a double-edged sword, isn't it, actually? So when you're doing such big operations, what you want to have, as I always say, to get you better for the patient, it's going to take me and the team here and you. So I need them to be motivated and really positive. Looking at the consent process, so you say, we're going to do this. If you don't have it done, this will happen. alternatives, this and this, but this is the best alternative, this is the best option, we think, but these are the complications. And sometimes you can drown people in complications, and you can then look at the 5% real problem when it's not, you know, and then, so, but you need to tell people, but you still want to maintain their, you know, positivity, which is you have to go through it, but at the end of it I say, look, you know, it's a balancing scale, and actually we're right down here, it's really positive to have it, and I need you on board. I'm going to work my socks off, so I need you to.
Can I ask you about your training? That you start off, you go to medical school, you specialise, you become a houseman in your day, and you end up as a senior, and then you become a consultant. At any stage of your career, did you have any leadership or management training?
So before you become a consultant, you had to be going a course.
All right.
It is mandatory. It can only be a one-day course. Now, leadership and management is not a one-day course.
No.
It is a mindset. It's a change in your person, and it
It's
is
a degree, actually.
It's
right.
I mean, I've done a postgraduate certificate in clinical leadership.
Right.
So I've done I've got a qualification in it. I've done a dissertation on it, and I read lots and lots of things about it because I'm very interested in it. And I think it's I suppose before in the NHS it was, you know, you became a consultant, then it's like, you know, oh, you were a leader then, and you know, then you're like, oh, do this leadership job.
Yeah.
It's like, well, hang on, that's you know, just because you're a consultant doesn't mean you have got that skill set. You've got to be able to get the background to it. So I think it's coming in, and this trust has really now taken it on board just recently. Julia Newton, you may know, is incredibly behind it, and other members of the senior team, and there's something called the Leadership Pipeline now. There's a Q group Leadership Pipeline, which means in this trust there is the chief executive, there's the medical director, there's the assistant medical directors, and then, you know, what you have is you have an identification of other people coming up. You've always got to have that pipeline coming up of people to train who are interested in it, to be able to say, right, okay, when this person retires and moves on, I've got somebody else in there. And I think that's as important a job as the clinical aspects of things.
It's been something that's been missing from the NHS. Any form of leadership training.
Agreed.
It happened at schools and colleges, universities as well. A person will come all the way through and suddenly they're in charge of, you know, 200 staff.
Yeah.
Without any leadership or management qualifications at all.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And then some people think that leadership is telling people what to do.
Yeah.
And actually, what was it Eisenhower said? He said the art of leadership is getting people to do things they want to do.
Yeah. That's
If I tell someone to do it, they might do it once and twice,
Yeah.
and then they'll just, if they don't want to do it, they'll just not do it. You know, same with everybody. But it is, I think, extremely important. Yeah, something I'm interested in, because doing these operations, they take it out of you, and you know, should I say my age now? 46. So you know, in 10 years' time, I don't want to be doing them. I want to be doing more, you know, having a career in leadership and management, and the youngsters can do those big operations.
Will it be the youngsters that are doing them with the announcement this week with the robotics?
Yeah,
first
right.
operation. Is there any room for robotics within your specialist?
When I do robotic surgery, so I do liver resections and pancreas resections, Steve White and myself and Gurab's just started actually. We've got the biggest HPB robotics program in the UK, and so we are extending the indications that we do these types of things. Gurab is going to do some training in kidney transplantation robotically. Liver transplantation, it's going to be, you know, it's a physical job, so I don't think that's ever going to be robotic. But I think the question you're asking is, do I feel better at the end of the day sitting down doing a robotic operation rather than standing up? I feel less physically tired, but mentally, it's like, you know, I don't know if you watch box sets, it's like watching a box set of something. At the end of the day, you're like, a bit fuzzy. You're looking at the screen all the time. So it's different type of thing, but physically probably less.
Of course, robotics are a long way away from being autonomous and AI. They are guided by a surgeon. It's just another method of doing the operation.
Yeah.
But it's magnified and in 3D and whatever.
Yeah, I mean, for them to do the operation, that's going to be a way off. There are ways now to identify cancer cells versus non-cancer cells, but for them to do the operation, I think that's going to be little bit further down the line, I think, actually. But it's fantastic to use it. And I was, so I'm on that cusp actually, so people a little bit older than me didn't grow up with computers. So I grew up, my first computer was ZX Sinclair Spectrum, right? Then I moved to Commodore 64, Commodore Amiga, and then PC. So and PlayStation, Sega, Nintendo. So I'm there. I used to do that. So I used to probably do it too much, to be honest. So whereas the older people are 60, they never had it. And the younger kids coming through now, they're into it. They're into it. So
that's right. Anyone got any questions? Clinical, surgical questions?
Anything.
In transplantation, I mean, the there's a certain rise. You've got to live it. So do you have people on standby, these teams, and you can call them in, or they're there just in case?
No, it's an on-call team. It's an on-call team, so an independent on-call team. So there'll be a team on for general surgery in case there's a problem with bleeding from anybody in the hospital, for example, obstruction. And then if there's a transplant, there's a special transplant team that will come in and do the operation. Any time of the day.
Yeah.
A lot of night operating at the moment.
Friday night.
Friday night starting at 11 o'clock. That's when you need to go with that smiley face.
Yeah.
You need to get the team there and just, chivvy them along.
Yeah.
If I go with a grumpy face.
The wife is called in half 11 on the Friday night.
There you go. It's important.
How do you find it unwind after a long operation? Or do you just naturally go home and
I go back and empty the dishwasher. Honestly, I go when you think you feel you're great, you're like, whatever, and I walk back home, depends what time it is, I've got 2 kids, my wife's GP, but you go, and then you're completely into a different environment. So, but actually it is an important point, and having an ability to be able to switch off is crucial. So what I do is physical exercise. I go to the gym here most days, or go running at home, or I get tucked into a book, and I think that's really important. Or I'll just unwind watching something on TV. I don't watch much, but for example, I box sets. So I'm on. Has anybody seen The Staircase?
No.
This murder thing.
Is it good?
Because my wife's into this murder stuff. Anyway, there you go.
Yeah.
It is really good.
Yeah.
It's like this fake sort of person impression. It's really good. It's like half an hour, and you go into that, and then you're just into it, and then it's fine. So, but it's important. It's about resilience, and I'll just say that sometimes people unwind with alcohol, cigarettes, or food.
Mm.
You go back home, you deserve a drink. I'm not saying don't drink. I do drink, but you don't want to be. That's, I think, a wrong way to unwind. But so it's a really good point, and that goes into the keeping yourself sharp.
How do you make sure in theatre that you're all having enough to eat and drink? Because obviously, if you're hungry and thirsty, and that's not going to help. Well,
that's a really good point. So I have a good food before I go in, whatever I've got a sandwich or something, I'll have something. And the other thing is, it's another sort of team building thing. So if you arrive at 11:30 on a Friday night, what we have now is everyone brings a few snacks. So, a bag of nuts from Aldi, or someone brings some Tang Fastics from Haribo, or someone will bring in Emily Bonner, nieces, she bakes something, because you get a bit of lead-in time. So she'll bake some biscuits or something. She comes in, it's great. Dr. Roberts never used to do that. So it's another team-building type of thing. And then if it's in the morning, you finish in the morning at 6, someone will go on a bacon butty round down to the canteen and get some bacon butties in.
What about toilet breaks though?
Yeah, it's right. So it's a weird thing actually. Even if you're in 6, 7, 8 hours, you never need to go to the toilet. No, I think you just get a bit dehydrated. I don't know. You just going through. It's not like holding eyes down. It's weird.
Too much clot on, anyway.
Yeah, that's just put a catheter. No, don't do that.
Well, that was excellent, wasn't it?
Yes. You can't remember that one, can you?
Am I going to draw some...
Yes, now would we like to show our appreciation?